Right, watch your folks, 965 back again. Had a message from a friend of mine who said, could you have a look at my mag mount? I think it's a little bit knackered. That's what turned up. So as you can see, the connector is less than perfectly round. This is a mount that I've had in here before, as you can see from the telltale blue heat shrink. He pulled the connector off once before, so I redid that for him. But now I need to have a look at that. So basically we're going to whip the screws out, we're going to take the cover off, take the boot off the bottom and have a look at what we've got inside and see if we can effect a repair. Okay, so now we've taken the 4 screws out of the mount. You take the rubber boot off the bottom, you turn that over, peel the rubber boot away. That just stops it scratching your car or your vehicle, whatever you're putting it on. And that's the magnet. And you can see this one's got a layer of silver foil underneath. And we're just going to drop that out. Oh yeah, I think we can safely say that that is knackered. There's part of the lock nut. So that's knackered. We'll get rid of the magnet and the lock nut as well. We'll have a look inside the base. So basically you've got this metal plate which goes in and allows contact between the magnet and the outer portion of the coax when the lock nut is in place. We'll take that and put that aside for the moment. Let me move that. And let's have a look at the inner part. Right, so there's the inside of the mount, and you can see there the inner part has completely broken away. And there's the other half of the nut that was around the connector. So that is well and truly shot. That connector has been done in as well. And you can see that on the other side. That is knackered. Now I know that what he's done is he's tried to change it himself and he's put it in a vise. So he's knackered it by putting it in a vise. So we'll get a new connector and we'll look at putting it back together. Okay, so I've removed the connector. There it is, and you can see there it is absolutely mullered. It's certainly not in the best of condition at all, and I couldn't actually get it to come out. Normally they just push in and out, but that one I actually had to punch it out with a mallet. So yeah, not good nick at all. There's a nice new one. And the flat on the connector there lines up with the flat there, so it should just push in. Before I go ahead and start reassembling it, this is an aftermarket antenna mag mount, and as such has no weatherproofing at all. So water can seep in under the screws, it can seep in through the connector, and it can also get in where the coax goes through the body. So we're going to seal all that up. In fact, you can see there some pretty rusty stains. So yeah, not so good. So we don't want any of that getting in the mag mount. I don't want him bringing it back again. So I'm actually going to seal those up. I'm going to run a bead of sealant around each of the screw holes, and I'm also going to seal up there, and I'm going to put some sealant in that end, and I'm also going to put some sealant on the inside here to weatherproof the whole thing. Once I've put it back together, I'm also going to run a bead all the way around the outside to try and stop any water ingress into the mount. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to have to let that go off slightly, and then we'll start putting it back together. Okay, so it does look a little messy at the moment. I have wiped off the excess, and I've also pushed through the holes so that the screws aren't going to get clogged up completely in muck. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to prep the coax ready to go in. So what we're going to need to do is make sure there's enough length to get to the center, which there is, and then we're going to expose quite a lot so that I can wind the braid up and make sure there's a good amount of braid going to the connector. Then we're going to strip off the inner dielectric, just enough so that I can solder it to the center pin, and then basically going to start putting it back together. Okay, so I've bared back the sheath, and what I've started to do is to unbraid the braid, if you like. I'll bring that in. Basically all you're going to do is get in between the braids and pull them apart, and what you're going to eventually end up with is two lengths on either side of the inner dielectric, which you're then going to wind together and solder to the outside. Okay, so you've got a length there that you can now put through the lock ring, or the ring that goes under the lock nut, and then you can wind it round and put a good amount of solder on there to make a good connection. Cut it to length, bare it off, solder it to the center pin. So once you've got that ready to go, just make sure you've got enough length, so a little way past the center hole there, so a little way past, cut that off, and then you can bare it back, pop that down inside the center pin for soldering, and then you've got your braid to go on the ring. Okay, so I've got the connector pushed through now. It's sitting on a nice bed of mastic on the top side of the cover, and what you want to do is wipe away any excess that comes in here. You want a nice connection when you put the plate and the nut on, so just wipe away any excess. Next, we're going to pop the plate back in and just spin it until it locates, and there it is. It won't move now. So that's that portion in next. The next thing to go on is the ring for the braid, and what I'm going to do is just bend it up slightly towards me. That goes on next. That's where we're going to put the braid through. Then you're going to put your lock nut on, and that goes on next. So we're just going to pop that on. Just do that up finger tight for the moment, and that's the new connector installed. If I turn it over, you can see it's sitting in a bed of mastic, and I will clean that up before I'm done. What we've got there is the center conductor of the coax into the center pin of the connector, and then the braid goes to the outer portion, and I put that through the holes in the ring that's under that nut. And one thing I did find to be a bit easier is if you put the braid through the ring before you put the ring and screw down the nut, put the braid through the ring, then put the ring over the top of the connector, then put the nut down. It's much easier than trying to feed it through after you've put the ring on. So all we're going to do now is solder in the center and also solder on the braid. Right, okay, so I tried to show you that as best as I could. These little fiddly jobs really are annoying to get in there and film at the same time, but pretty much covered all of that there. Next job is multimeter and to test for shorts. So just to make sure that everything is good, you want to make sure that there's no continuity between the inner and the outer. So put that on the center pin. And there's nothing. No continuity between the inner and the outer, which is the way it should be. So it is working. So inner and outer, there's nothing, no continuity. If you don't slip, there's no continuity, which is exactly the way it should be. Okay, so one of the common problems with these Magmount bases is that the wire gets pulled, and when the wire gets pulled and maybe pushed back and pulled again, what happens is it weakens the connections inside. And one way to combat this is with a simple cable tie. So all you're going to do is put a cable tie around the cable, and that will stop it from being pulled through. It's quite a common thing, you know, people go to get it off the roof and they'll pull the cable not thinking. So one way of combating that, as I say, is just with a simple cable tie. Pop it around there. If you wind it around your finger, it will give it a curve, and then you can just simply push it through. So that's where I've put mine. Okay, then you're going to come in with your side cutters, obviously, and remove the excess, thusly. And then I'm going to push that under, and that allows me room then to put the mastic sealant around the inlet there of the pipe. That doesn't have to look particularly nice being on the inside. But what I am going to do is just clean that little bit off the metal there. And as you can see, this stuff's particularly gacky to use. I don't normally use it on such intricate jobs. There, just clean the most of that off there. Okay, so we are now ready to reinstall the magnet portion. Now on this particular mount, there are 4 points of contact between the magnet and the braid, or the outer part of the coax. Each one of those threaded turrets contacts this plate, and as you might be able to see there, I've cleaned the plate. I've also cleaned the top of each one of those, so there's a nice contact. Now on some of the Sirio magnetic bases, you don't have that set up. You have a larger copper piece here that goes around the outside of the connector. That then goes out to one of the bolt holes, and you'll probably notice if you ever take one apart, if you ever need to take one apart, there are I think it's 3 round holes and 1 hexagonal, and I believe that the copper piece goes to the hexagonal one, or it's the other way round, 3 hexagonals and 1 round. Whichever way it is, the copper part goes to the one that's different, basically. But on this, we don't have to worry. So what I'm going to do is line it up and plonk it in. Like that, flip it over, just line up the holes, and we'll put the screws back in. Okay, so I don't actually use much force, but I just can't be bothered to do it all with a hand screwdriver. So we just nip them up with the hand one, just to make sure they're all tight. That one needs a bit of a go in. That one as well. And that one as well. Now, if I zoom in, you can see that the mastic has run out from around the screws. That's exactly what you want. You want that, a nice even amount of squishing around the screw head, because then you know that it's got a seal all the way around the screw on every one. Now, just wipe that top off like that, and you can still see there's a line of mastic around there, so that's fine. That one, and the last one. Well, I know my friend isn't going to be in the slightest bit bothered about a bit of that. Right, so that's all the screws on. That's the mount now back together. So there it is, all put back together. We're going to put a bit of sealant in the end of here to stop that getting any water in it. That's already sealed, they're all sealed. Then we're going to put the rubber boot on, and I'm going to run an extra bead around the base, again, just to prevent any water ingress.